you see from that how juxtaposing who you want to be versus maybe who you are through the choices that you're making. Maybe we're not as thoughtful as we could be in sculpting our own legacy, our own contribution to the world. Who are we really put here to be? So that tension of the juxtaposition is supposed to help launch us into the new year. So the purpose of the tension is to help us feel, to help us dream, and then to help us regret what we've done wrong. So there's a humongous difference between regret and guilt in Judaism. So regret is when you see your mistakes as external to who you are. A mistake is something that I did. It's something external to me. It's an act. Guilt is when we start internalizing our mistakes, and as opposed to being something that I did, it becomes something that defines who I am. It's not just that I, did something wrong. It's that I'm the kind of person who does things like that. And we start beating ourselves up and feeling guilty. As opposed to I made a mistake, I am a mistake. It becomes intrinsic to me. And that's what Judaism is trying to really keep us away from. Every morning we say, Elokai neshama shanatata bi tohori. God, the soul you placed in me is pure. And it's different explanations for that prayer, but one of the main explanations is the real you is your soul. The real you is this pure, untouchable, like this breath of God. That's who you are. And there's nothing that you could do that can mess that up. Maybe you could put some schmutz on the outside of the light bulb to dull the light, to shadow the light, to dim the light. But once you rinse off the light bulb, the light is as strong as it ever was. That's you. And that's what Yom Kippur affords us, this opportunity to wash off the light bulb. I read this excerpt from a book called something like The Atheist's Guide to Judaism, something like that. And the author is an atheist. And he was saying, even without God, Judaism has all of these fantastic ideas that whether you believe in God or you don't, avail yourself of all of these terrific ideas that Judaism is giving us. And in Yom Kippur, he spoke about how, and this expert, that's the one excerpt that I read, was what he said about Yom Kippur, is that, in relationships, you sometimes get an elephant in the room. You said something and the other person heard you but didn't really react, but you said it and they know they said it, and you don't quite know how to bring it up, and they're not going to bring it up, and just becomes this distance that keeps growing between you because you never had a moment to sort of address it. And he says Yom Kippur gives you that excuse, that moment to say, remember that time that I said this and you pretended you didn't hear me, but I know you did and you know you did, and now we don't feel close to each other. Remember that whole thing? I just really want to apologize to you. Yom Kippur sort of gives you a platform, a pause, a moment to do that and to be able to make that apology. But Judaism, because we inject God into everything, in Judaism, there is no space where God is not. In Judaism, we don't see business as separate from God, or relationships as separate from God, or school, or anything. Everything has to do with, I'm created in the image of God. God is here in this moment. What is expected of me? How can I rise to this occasion? Because the divine is woven into everything that we do, every interaction you have with people or alone, with the environment, with animals. There's laws about how you interact with your animals. I have a dog. I have to feed the dog before I eat if she needs to eat, because that's what the Torah says. The divine is everywhere. That's always, greatness is always expected of us. Not because I feel like it, but because God says, hey, my world, take care of the animals. Don't cut down a fruit tree. Don't, pull wings off a fly. You're not going to do that. Not because of the animal activists or because of the environment or because it's PC or in right now. The Torah said this thousands of years ago. There's a way to interact with my world. And you'll be a happier person if you're connected to these ancient mystical rules of how the planet works. So in Judaism, as much as this, as much as I, appreciate what the Atheist Guide to Judaism says, that's not my portal into Judaism, the Atheist Guide. I believe that God is front and center. And the reason why we have Yom Kippur is because there is this divine experience woven into it. That's what makes it special. So what Judaism tells us is that within Yom Kippur, not only does it give you this opportunity to smooth over your relationships, it's so much more than that. What Yom Kippur is an opportunity to take all the mistakes that you made last year. If you can take all those mistakes and you can, by juxtaposing them against who you want to be, and now you see all these mistakes and you're like, how could I have, gossiped? If I want to be this elevated person, I don't want to be like snarking about people behind their backs. How could I do that? And if that regret helps you say, I'm not doing that again, I'm better than that. If that happens, then those bricks that you tripped over last year become bricks that you build with this year. Because those mistakes help you realize, I'm so off track. That's not who I want to be. I want to be her. And these mistakes are not helping me. But if you can get the understanding from those mistakes and switch how you act, then those past mistakes are actually transformed into mitzvot. Because that's what helped you. They became steps to the higher you. So it's this huge magic trick, this sleight of hand that helps you build from your past mistakes. And the name of that magic trick is called tshuva. Tshuva literally means return. We spoke about last time, I think, about how people think tshuva means like go back to being perfect. But you can't go back to being perfect because, newsflash, you never were perfect. So you can't go back to being that. So what does tshuva mean then? It doesn't mean go back to not making mistakes, because that's just not human. What tshuva means, return, what are you returning to? You're returning to hoping to be that person. You're returning to the fight. You're returning to the arena. You're returning to the road. There's something in us that sometimes just says, you know what? Forget it. I tried, it didn't work, forget it. And Judaism says, don't do that. Don't do that. The beginning of the year gives us this opportunity to revisit our strategy, our plan of getting to the next level of who we want to be, and to return to trying to be that person. Now, tshuva is something that people learn about, like we're doing now, talk about, like I'm doing right now, read about, which maybe you've done, think about, but it's not something that people always do. Tshuva is not something that you talk about or think about or learn about, or tshuva is something that you actually need to do. It's a practice. We always say Judaism is a religion of action. You have to actually, you think taking care of poor people is nice. That's so beautiful. But you have to do it, not believe in it. You have to go do it. So tshuva is something you have to do. So the Rambam, Maimonides, says that tshuva has 5 steps to it. They're not difficult. You just have to actually do them. So I'm going to run through the 5 steps, but then what I want to do is take the 5th step and kind of go a little bit in like a new direction with that one. I heard a great class by Rabbi Kellerman, and he really expounded upon this, and I want to share that with you. And if anybody wants to hear his class, email me, and I'll tell you where you can find his class and listen to it yourself. So here we go. Maimonides' 5 steps of tshuva. So Lori Palatna came up with a great mnemonic device for this. So it's RSVP, switch the S and the R, so it's SRVP, okay? Which is only 4 letters and there's 5 steps. You'll see that V has 2 parts, okay? So it's RSVP, switch the S and the R, SRVP. Here we go. Step 1 of tshuva is S, stop. The first thing you have to do is stop doing the thing that you're doing wrong. Now, obviously, you can't stop doing everything wrong, but we're going to show you, after we go through the 5 steps, how to pick one thing and focus on that. Okay, but in general, obviously, if, I don't know, one kid is hitting the other, and you're like, stop hitting your brother, and he's like, okay, I'm sorry, but he keeps hitting him, we have a problem, right? Number 1 is stop doing the thing wrong. Stop gossiping, stop lying, stop whatever. And sometimes people, I just want to digress here for a second, sometimes people see Judaism as like this whole list of no's. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And it feels limiting. It feels narrow. But that's just a misunderstanding of what the Torah is pointing us towards. If I tell you, I don't betray my friends, I won't lie. I'm not saying I mean, I do try to do these things, but theoretically speaking, if I were to say, I don't lie, I don't get angry, I don't gossip about my friends behind their back, are those things limiting me? Are those things expanding me? By saying I don't betray my friends, what I'm disconnecting from something. Betraying is the limiting reality. I won't step there. I won't do that because I want to be an expansive person. All of the no's in Judaism is saying no to the limitation and saying yes to the expansiveness that results from being able to say no to something. You know, people who can't say no, that's just called a lack of self-discipline. It's good to be able to say no to certain things in the world. So Judaism is pointing us in the direction of, don't do that. That's beneath you. You're better than that. So number 1 is stop doing the thing that is limiting you. Step into that expansiveness that comes from stopping things that are self-destructive. Number 1, stop. Number 2, R, regret. You need to actually feel bad for the things you did wrong. And Rabbi Kellen makes the point. He said, I don't know about you, but I only do sins that are enjoyable. Like, I don't do sins that are not enjoyable. You only make the mistake because it's fun to eat that, to do that, whatever. So he said, you can't stop doing the thing wrong, but then when you think about it, go, oh God, I used to love that. Oh, so fun. Like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to feel bad. So he said, sometimes you can't feel bad, like, I don't know, let's say eating something that isn't kosher, as in one example, but like it tasted good, you know? So he said you could imagine, as opposed to feeling regret about the thing, which might be hard because it was enjoyable, he said, if I think about the movie of my life being shown and I couldn't resist that temptation, I regret that weakness is part of my movie. Even if it's hard for me to regret that thing, because that thing was enjoyable and I'm a human being and I like pleasure and like, I'm just doing the best that I can here. See, that's why there's no guilt. You're just doing the best. You're all doing the best that we can. Like, that's okay. So even if I can't regret the thing that I did wrong, I could regret that I had like a moment of weakness and I wasn't able to like control myself and get that scene out of my movie. That's a different way of coming at it. Regret, you have to feel bad either that you did the thing like gossiping or lying or betraying or stealing. You could feel bad about those things. Or it was something that was like, oh, it's hard to really feel regret. We could feel regret that we weren't able to say no to something that maybe is limiting us because it was just too hard for us at that time. So that's the R, regret.